What if the smartest mind in your company was the 12-year-old daughter of a mechanic? Would you trust her or humiliate her in front of everyone? Stick around, because by the end of this video, you'll witness how one underestimated girl didn't just fix an impossible engine. She exposed a million-dollar fraud, brought down a corrupt empire, and changed an entire industry before she even hit high school. The pneumatic hiss of an air gun stopped mid-clack when Mr. Gregory Stone's voice sliced through Central Motors like a razor. "Derek, why is there a child in my shop during an inspection?" Every wrench froze. 12-year-old Avery Parker straightened from the open hood of a 2018 Chevy, her braids brushing the greasy fender, a half-inch socket still in her fingers. She'd hurried over from school the same way she did every afternoon to shadow her dad. "I'm sorry, Mr. Stone," Derek called, wiping his hands on a rag as he hurried over. "Avery, sweetheart, head home. We'll talk later." But Stone lifted a manicured hand. 50, silver-haired, dressed in a suit that cost more than most of the cars they serviced, he let a slow smile crawl across his face. "Hold up. Let the girl stay." Avery met his eyes. She'd seen that look before. Teachers who assumed she was trouble. Security guards who tailed her in corner stores. Neighbors who locked car doors at the sight of her. The look that decided your worth before you opened your mouth. "You know, Derek," Stone said, turning on a polished heel, "if your prodigy feels so at home under a hood, let's give her a real puzzle." He led the group to the back bay, where a tarp draped over a sleek Porsche 911. Stone whisked it off with magician flair. 3 days in this shop, 6 other locations, half a dozen master techs, no crank, no codes, no clue. Figure out why, and maybe I keep Central Motors on my roster. Gasps ricocheted around the concrete floor. Not even Tommy Ruiz, 30-year vet with grease for blood, had cracked that Porsche. "Sir, she's only," Derek began. "Exactly," Stone cut in, clasping his hands behind his back. "A kid who practically lives here. Surely she's absorbed your expertise, yes? Let's see the magic." Avery's pulse hammered, but another, quieter beat rose beneath it. The same hum she felt solving algebra her classmates swore was rocket science, the buzz when she rewired a busted game console. She saw things, tiny misfires, mismatched voltages before they burned. And the Porsche? She'd been studying it in secret since it rolled in. She stepped forward, voice level. "All right, I'll try. Now pause for a second and ask yourself, what would you do if the fate of your family's livelihood rested on your shoulders? And you were just 12. Would you freeze in front of a room full of grown men waiting for you to fail? Or would you do what Avery did, step forward, heart pounding, and say, 'All right, I'll try'? Because in this moment, it wasn't just about fixing a car. It was about fixing a perception. Stone barked a laugh, then addressed the mechanics like a carnival barker. "Hear that? Our junior engineer accepts. Stakes time. If she diagnoses the fault, this shop stays open and everyone gets a bonus. If she can't," he paused, savoring the hush, "well, boxes are cheap." 8 grown mechanics shifted, boots scuffing epoxy. Tommy muttered to Derek, "Boss is out of line." "I know," Derek whispered back, throat tight, "but one wrong move and he shutters us today." Avery ignored them. She circled the Porsche, fingertips dancing along the flawless paint. To the casual eye, it was a child playing pretend. Tommy's seasoned gaze told him different. She checked ignition, then fuel, then electrical. The exact triage he taught apprentices. "Interesting," Avery murmured, more to herself. Stone sneered. "Figure it out yet, princess? Or need a juice box first?" No answer. She crouched, tapping the slim black module wired into the ECU harness. "This controller, is anyone sure it's transmitting the right data to the computer?" Silence. Tommy scratched his temple. They'd scoped relays, injectors, coils, but not that aftermarket-looking box. New tech. Older guys hadn't caught the memo. "Of course we checked," Stone lied smoothly. "Everything's been checked. The issue needs expertise you clearly lack." Avery shrugged. "Makes sense. I only read about those modules a while back." She clammed up, realizing how that sounded. "Read where?" Tommy asked. "In the tech manuals in Dad's office," she admitted. I borrow them, translate the tricky sections on my phone. There are some great walkthroughs on YouTube. Stone's laugh echoed off metal walls. Marvelous. A $200,000 supercar, and our fix is YouTube DIY. Yet the longer Avery inspected, the more his grin twitched. She spoke again, stronger this time. The direct injection system uses a digital signature. If the ECU doesn't recognize the code, it disables ignition as theft protection. Digital signature? Tommy repeated. Think of it like a password, she explained, tracing wires. Replace a part without syncing its code, the car thinks it's stolen and locks down. Ethan Cole, the youngest tech, blinked. Never covered that in school. It's brand new in the manuals, Avery said. Stone slapped his palms. Enough trivia. Either light this thing up or admit you're out of your depth. Avery inhaled, meeting his stare. Fine. Give me 15 minutes alone with the car and a laptop online. I'll reprogram the module. Derek nearly choked. Reprogram? How do you even... To reset the signatures, she answered. It's straightforward if you know where to download the firmware. I'm not letting a kid brick a Porsche, Stone snapped. That's when Tommy stepped forward, grease-streaked arms folding across his chest. Let her. Worst case, we're no worse off. Best case, you get your Porsche and your ego polished. Avery shot Tommy a grateful look. For 6 months, she'd pored over advanced diagnostics on her dad's shop computer after hours. She'd even traced VIN histories through forums and OEM portals. She knew what ailed this Porsche the day it arrived. Fear had kept her quiet. Not anymore. Stone huffed, but motioned to a rolling workstation. 15 minutes. Clock starts now. Avery plugged in her battered laptop, fingers flying over keys. Lines of code scrolled like neon. The men watched, spellbound. Dad, she said without looking up, remember when I told you I was just reading those manuals? Yeah, Derek replied, voice thin. I wasn't just reading, I was experimenting. A pin could have dropped. Stone stepped closer, face reddening. Experimenting how? I accessed Porsche's diagnostic network. She kept typing. Not to steal, only to study why so many engines failed the same way. Stone sputtered. A child can't hack Porsche security. Avery finally glanced at him. A normal child can't. She hit enter. The ECU beeped, screen flashing signature reset successful. The workshop lights seemed to brighten. Tommy's mouth fell open. Did she just... Avery climbed into the driver's seat, thumbed the start button. The flat six roared to life, exhaust rumbling like applause. Tools and clipboards clattered as the crew erupted. Stone's jaw hung slack. Avery shut the engine off and slid out. Diagnostic complete. Intentional software lockout via counterfeit module. Stone struggled for words while the mechanics whooped. Derek pulled Avery into a hug, disbelief and pride warring on his face. But Avery's gaze stayed fixed on Stone. And that, she said evenly, was the easy part. Part 2. Renamed. The sound of that engine roaring to life hadn't just broken the silence, it had shattered something deeper. The illusion, the hierarchy, the game Gregory Stone had controlled for years with smug confidence. And now, standing in the middle of the garage he once ruled, he looked small, rattled, even afraid. Tommy stepped toward the Porsche, brows knitted. Wait, counterfeit module. You're saying someone put a fake part in this car? Not just fake, Avery said, disconnecting her laptop. It's a genuine part, but the firmware was modified. It was programmed to fail after 90 days, perfectly timed, right after the warranty window ends. The room froze. 8 men, seasoned and skeptical, now looked at this girl like she was from another world. Ethan leaned in. That's sabotage. Who would do that? Avery didn't blink. That's the real question, isn't it? Now picture yourself standing where Avery is. 12 years old, grease on your hands, every grown-up in the room waiting to call you a liar. What would you do if the next words out of your mouth could either clear your dad's name or cost him his job? Type, I'd speak up, or I'd freeze in the comments. Because in the next 60 seconds, Avery's about to prove that the smallest voice in the garage can hit the loudest nerve in the industry. Stone stepped forward, trying to reclaim control. Now listen here, don't throw around wild accusations. You don't know where that part came from. Maybe it was aftermarket, some idiot installed it before the car came in. I checked, Avery replied calmly. It's OEM. Same serial range as 17 other cars we've serviced in the past 8 months. And all of them had the same mysterious shutdown exactly 3 months in. Tommy rubbed his jaw. 70? You kept track? Avery turned her screen toward the crew. A spreadsheet glowed with VINs, service dates, symptoms, and shop locations. I've been tracking it for months, pulling data from our system, but the pattern didn't make sense until this car. Stone's expression twisted, but he was still reaching for an out. This is nonsense. You're a child with a conspiracy theory. You don't know what you're looking at. Avery tapped a few keys and opened another window. Maybe. Or maybe I found internal communications between Porsche and third-party vendors confirming the programmed failures. She paused. And between you and those vendors. The room went still again. Stone's eyes darted to the screen, where lines of emails began appearing, signed, dated, tagged with company logos. You're lying, he whispered. Avery looked at him without a trace of emotion. No, I just stopped pretending I didn't know. Derek stepped closer, his voice unsteady. Avery, how did you get those emails? I traced the diagnostic update system back to a shared cloud folder, she explained. Then I cross-referenced metadata with the repair logs from our shop. Some accounts weren't secured. Stone blanched. You hacked my company's back end. Avery didn't flinch. I accessed data that was exposed because your security protocols are stuck in 2009. That's not hacking. That's just knowing where to look. Ethan muttered under his breath. She's 12. No, Tommy corrected. She's a storm we never saw coming. Stone lunged forward. This is illegal. All of it. She accessed private files. Stole corporate property. You mean like this? Avery asked, clicking open a third window. A live feed from Central Motors' Facebook page flickered to life on the projector screen, showing the entire conversation, every insult, every confession streaming live to thousands. Comments rolled in. Wait, what the hell is this? Are they saying Porsche sabotaged cars? Is this real? Someone tag a lawyer. Stone's going down. I knew something was off when my car died at 91 days. Stone staggered back a step, the color draining from his face. You were live this whole time? I turned it on the moment you dared me, Avery said, because I knew what I'd find, and I knew no one would believe me unless they saw it for themselves. A long silence followed. Then, from somewhere outside, the sound of sirens pierced the air. Someone had called the authorities. Tommy stepped closer to Stone, shaking his head. You could have just fixed the damn cars. Instead, you made us lie. Made us feel like failures. You made me watch my daughter cry because she thought I couldn't fix it, Derek added. And you knew. The whole time. Stone opened his mouth, but nothing came out. Avery took a deep breath, then turned to the camera and clicked off the live stream. She closed her laptop with a soft snap. You thought I was just the mechanic's kid. You looked at my skin, my age, and you decided I couldn't possibly be a threat. But you forgot something. What's that? Stone asked, voice barely a whisper. You gave me access to your shop, to your data, and to your ego. You underestimated me so hard you practically invited me to take you down. The front door slammed open. 2 federal agents stepped inside, badges raised. Mr. Stone, we need to speak with you. Derek stepped back, arms around Avery protectively. But she didn't need protection anymore. The agents moved forward, and as they cuffed Stone and read him his rights, he didn't resist. He just kept staring at Avery. You ruined me, he muttered. Avery raised an eyebrow. No, you did that all by yourself. As the door shut behind Stone and the agents, the shop erupted. Cheers, laughter, disbelief. Tommy grabbed Derek and hugged him. Ethan fist-bumped Avery, still shaking his head. I can't believe it, he said. That was the most epic takedown I've ever seen. Avery smiled, but it wasn't triumphant. It was measured, calm. Justice isn't epic, she said quietly. "It's necessary." Derek knelt to her level, voice cracking. "I had no idea, baby. I didn't know you were carrying all this." "I didn't want you to worry," she said. "I just needed to prove something. Not to him, to myself." Tommy nodded. "Well, you did more than that. You saved this place. You saved all of us." And in the back of the shop, under the same lights that had once cast doubt and silence, Avery stood tall. Not as a child, not as an apprentice, but as the girl who saw the pattern, who connected the dots, who flipped the whole damn story. She had just begun. 3 months later, the echo of that day still rang through the auto world. It started with a tweet. Just one clip from the live stream, Avery Parker calmly diagnosing the impossible Porsche failure while Gregory Stone sputtered in the background. The caption read, "This 12-year-old just exposed a multi-million-dollar fraud scandal with a laptop, a wrench, and pure brilliance." It went viral overnight. News outlets picked it up. Influencers stitched it with reactions. Then came the deep dives, national tech shows, investigative segments, even 60 Minutes. Everyone wanted a piece of the story. But while the world rushed to tell her tale, Avery stayed quiet, publicly at least. Privately, she was building something bigger. Inside a sleek glass tower in downtown Seattle, Avery stood in front of a room full of adults, executives, engineers, investors, most with PhDs and resumes longer than novels. And yet, not one of them spoke. They watched her every move. Behind her, a giant screen showed flowcharts, diagrams, and raw data feeds from auto diagnostic systems. Avery was explaining the future. So by embedding real-time checksum validators and cross-referencing digital signatures at the firmware level, she said, laser pointer steady, we can catch 98% of intentional module failures before they even affect the vehicle. She clicked to the next slide. A projected savings of $1.4 billion in warranty costs. Gasps followed. Madison Blake, VP of Engineering at Tesla, raised her hand. "Avery, this system, it's revolutionary. Who helped you build it?" Avery smiled. "I did, but it's not finished. Not until I take it back to where I started. If you were 12, standing in a skyscraper, surrounded by PhDs and executives, would you stay humble, or would you take the mic and show them everything they missed? Comment below. I'd speak, or I'd freeze." Because this is the moment Avery realized she didn't just fix a car, she cracked a system. And now she had a choice. Play by their rules, or rebuild her own from the ground up. What would you do if the world finally started listening to the voice it used to ignore? "Back," Blake asked. "To my dad's shop. The guys who believed in me before anyone else did." Gasps again, this time filled with admiration. Avery Parker, 12-year-old autodidact and now de facto fraud whistleblower, wasn't just a headline anymore. She was negotiating a multi-million-dollar contract on her terms. Across town, in a very different room, Gregory Stone sat hunched over a table, his ankle monitor blinking red. The kitchen was dim. His hands were dirty ironically, for the first time in years from doing real work. After the FBI fraud case, he'd been sentenced to 18 months of house arrest and fined $500,000. Porsche, desperate to distance itself, had pulled all contracts and dumped internal documents that validated Avery's claims. Lawsuits followed. The rest unraveled fast. Stone now lived alone. His wife had left, taking the house, the car, and the savings account. His former business partners wouldn't answer his calls, and every time he walked into a repair shop looking for work, someone recognized him from the stream. "I was ruined by a kid," he said aloud, bitterness thick in his voice. But there was no one left to listen. Meanwhile, Central Motors had become unrecognizable. The cracked linoleum had been replaced with polished concrete. The dingy waiting room now had sleek glass dividers, clean signage, and a glowing new nameplate, Parker and Daughter, Automotive Technology. The shop had become more than a repair center. It was now a hub, a training ground for young people from the neighborhood. Avery and Derek had partnered with nonprofit organizations to offer free courses on diagnostics, automotive programming, and digital ethics. On any given day, you'd find teens from all backgrounds gathered around used car hoods, laptops open, learning how to code ECUs and decode electrical patterns. Avery floated between them, always listening, always teaching. Tommy Ruiz approached her one afternoon with a tablet in hand. "Got something for you," he said with a proud grin. On the screen was a prototype, the next version of Avery's fraud detection software, now with real-time error reporting, modular firmware rollback, and tamper flags. It was sleek, efficient, beautiful. "Ethan coded half of it," Tommy said. "Kid's a natural." "I told you," Avery replied. "You've always had the talent, you just didn't have the tools." Derek came over, wiping sweat from his brow. "You know, there was a time I told you to stop fiddling with car parts and focus on school." Avery laughed. "Yeah, that didn't age well. I'm glad you didn't listen." One day, during a school talk at a local middle school, a boy raised his hand, maybe 13, nervous but curious. "Avery, weren't you scared that day when you stood up to Mr. Stone?" Avery smiled, thinking back to that moment, the wrench in her hand, the eyes watching her, the weight of her father's job, the mechanic's futures, the whispers of doubt in her head. "Yeah," she said honestly, "I was terrified. But courage isn't the absence of fear. It's deciding that something else matters more." The auditorium fell silent. "He had money, power, control. I only had the truth, but that was enough." A girl in the back row spoke up. "But what if no one believed you?" Avery's face softened. "Then I would have kept proving it over and over until someone did. Because when people expect the least from you, you can either shrink or surprise them." She paused. "I chose to surprise them." The crowd of kids erupted in applause. Back at the shop, Avery's software, now dubbed Code Clean, had been installed in more than 2,000 repair centers across the country. It helped detect intentional defects, faulty modules, and service scams in real time. The entire automotive service industry was changing. And it had started with one impossible challenge. Tommy looked over at Derek one afternoon. "You ever think we'd work for a 12-year-old? Derek grinned. "I'm still trying to figure out when I stopped being the boss." Ethan laughed. "When she rewrote our whole playbook in a weekend." But Avery didn't care about the titles. She cared about the mission. To protect people who couldn't afford to be lied to. To teach kids like her that they could change the world with knowledge, not permission. And to prove, once and for all, that being underestimated wasn't a weakness, it was an edge. 6 months after the live stream exploded across the internet, Avery Parker walked into one of the largest tech conferences in North America, an event she had only read about online before. This time, she wasn't just attending, she was the keynote speaker. Flanked by 2 Tesla engineers and a representative from the Department of Transportation, Avery passed through sliding glass doors into a conference hall buzzing with industry giants. Her name was printed on every brochure, her face on the massive digital billboard overhead. Avery Parker, the girl who reprogrammed the automotive industry. She took the stage to a standing ovation. Pause a second and picture the spotlight hitting you, thousands of CEOs and reporters waiting to hear whether a teenager can actually rewrite their rulebook. Would your voice shake? Or would you lean in and own the mic? Tell me in the comments, "I'd own it," or "I'd panic," because in the next 30 seconds, Avery's about to drop a truth bomb that will make every executive in that hall question who really runs the future of their industry. Adjusting the mic, she scanned the crowd. Rows of suited professionals, tech founders, and journalists waited with notebooks and phones out. But instead of nerves, Avery felt a calm strength rising from deep within. She spoke clearly, confidently. 6 months ago, I was just the mechanic's daughter. I didn't have a degree. I wasn't on anyone's radar. I had a laptop, a stack of stolen hours after school, and a deep suspicion that the cars we were fixing weren't really broken. She paused as murmurs swept the room. They were being broken on purpose, by systems, by greed, and by people who thought no one would notice. A quiet hush fell. "I noticed," she said. "And I realized that if no one was going to stand up for the people being taken advantage of, my dad, our shop, our community, I would. The applause started slow, then roared. Back in her hometown, Parker and daughter Automotive technology had evolved from a garage to a national model. Community leaders dropped by frequently. Students enrolled in after-school programs that blended mechanical engineering with computer science. What had once been a grease-stained backlot was now a STEM innovation lab with 3D printers, coding stations, and a wall of testimonials from grateful customers. One framed message read, "My daughter wants to be like Avery. Thank you for giving her someone to look up to." Meanwhile, Gregory Stone's world had grown smaller and darker. Confined to a one-bedroom apartment with an ankle monitor blinking beneath his socks, he flipped through news channels just to feel something. But every time he landed on Avery's name, his bitterness deepened. Search engines now paired his own with words like fraud, scandal, and disgraced. He'd filed appeals, claimed the emails were fake, the stream manipulated, but forensic reports backed everything Avery uncovered. One afternoon, he walked into a dusty garage in a far-flung suburb, resume in hand, desperate for work. The owner looked at the resume, blinked, then laughed. "You're Stone? From the live stream? The one that girl destroyed?" Stone didn't even argue. He just turned and left. For the first time in his life, he truly understood what it meant to be seen and instantly dismissed. One day, back at the shop, Avery sat alone in her dad's old office, reviewing a new grant proposal, when Derek Parker knocked and stepped in. "Got a minute?" "Always." He handed her a letter. "From the White House." Avery blinked. "Seriously?" He nodded, smiling. "They want to award you the National Youth Innovation Medal. Big ceremony. DC, all expenses paid." She sat back, stunned for a second, then grinned. "Think I'll need a new blazer?" Derek laughed. "I think you'll need a whole new wardrobe, kid." She stood, hugged him. "Thanks for always letting me hang around the shop. Thanks for never listening when I told you not to." During a local news interview that same month, a reporter posed a question Avery hadn't expected. "Would you change anything about how it happened if you could go back?" She thought about it. The humiliation, the pressure, the fear of being wrong, of letting down her dad, the look in Stone's eyes when he realized he'd lost. "No," she answered softly. "I wouldn't change anything. Without that challenge, I never would have had the chance to show what I knew. And more importantly, I wouldn't have realized how many people needed someone to stand up." The reporter nodded. "You didn't just stand up, you changed an entire system." "I didn't do it alone," Avery said. "My dad, Tommy, Ethan, everyone who trusted me, even when they didn't fully understand what I was doing, they're part of this story. It's never just one person. It's a community that believes change is possible." By year's end, Clean Codes, the nonprofit Avery founded, was operating in 7 cities, with workshops popping up in Detroit, Atlanta, Baltimore, and Oakland. Kids from underserved communities were learning to program ECUs, build diagnostic tools, and spot predatory service practices. They weren't just learning how to fix cars. They were learning how to challenge systems. During one class, a girl raised her hand. "Avery, how do I know if I'm good enough to be here?" Avery knelt beside her. "You showed up. You're already good enough. Everything else, we'll figure out together." The girl nodded. Avery smiled. She remembered that feeling, being unsure, out of place, doubted. And she had turned that feeling into fuel. Late one evening, after everyone had gone home, Avery stood alone in the garage. The lights were dim. The tools were clean. The Porsche, the very one that started it all, sat quietly in the corner. She walked over, laid a hand on the hood. "You're the best thing that ever broke," she whispered. Outside, the sky was dark, but inside, the garage felt warm, alive, ready for whatever came next. 2 years later, a fresh breeze drifted across the green lawns of the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. Inside one of its high-security research buildings, Avery Parker was hard at work. Now a 14-year-old prodigy on a full scholarship in a specialized engineering track for gifted youth. While her former classmates back home were still learning algebra, Avery was designing machine learning protocols to detect hardware fraud in real time. But even in the heart of the world's top engineering labs, Avery's roots never left her. She still Zoom called her dad every Friday. still answered texts from Ethan Cole and Tommy Ruiz about weird car codes and phantom faults, still wore her Parker and daughter hoodie on campus, even when big-shot professors dangled internships at Tesla, Waymo, and NASA. To the outside world, she was a genius. To the people who knew her best, she was still Avery, the girl who once fixed a Porsche to save her dad's shop. Meanwhile, Clean Codes had grown beyond anything Avery could have imagined. With branches in 23 cities, it had trained more than 12,000 students from underserved communities, many of whom had since earned certifications, landed jobs in automotive tech, and even filed patents of their own. Every workshop featured a mural on one wall, a girl in braids, holding a wrench in one hand and a laptop in the other, staring down a man in a suit with fire in her eyes. Never let them decide your limits. The program had been featured on CNN, in Forbes, and even in a documentary titled Codebreaker, The Avery Parker Story. One afternoon, Avery returned home for a surprise visit. It had been almost a year since she'd walked through the doors of Parker and Daughter Automotive Technology. The workshop buzzed with energy. Teens coded modules beneath Avery's old posters. Derek Parker, now semi-retired, sipped coffee and watched with quiet pride. Tommy Ruiz stood in a corner explaining voltage drop theory to a group of eager young techs, and Ethan Cole, now director of diagnostics, was giving a TED-style talk on the evolution of automotive fraud detection. When Avery stepped inside, the whole shop paused. She said nothing, just smiled and opened her arms. The reunion was hugs, laughter, disbelief. "I thought you were off changing the world," Tommy teased. "I am," Avery said. "But it started here. So I always come back." Later, walking through the neighborhood, she passed the bus stop where she and Derek used to wait after school. A little girl, maybe 9, rode by on a pink bike. She slowed, eyes widening. "Hey, are you her?" Avery smiled. "Depends who you mean." "The girl who fixed that car. The one the rich guy said couldn't do it, but you did anyway." Avery chuckled. "Yeah, that's me." The girl grinned. "I want to be like you." "You already are," Avery said. "You just haven't been challenged yet." That night, Avery and her dad sat on the porch. Cicadas buzzed, streetlights flickered on. Avery's laptop glowed softly as she tweaked code for a new predictive maintenance tool. Derek sipped his tea. "You ever stop?" Avery smirked. "You ever stop fixing stuff in your head, even off the clock?" "Touché." Silence settled, comfortable. Then Derek asked what had been on his mind. "What do you want to do, Avery? Really, when you're not proving anything to anyone, just for you?" She thought. "I want to build things that make people feel safe. Systems that can't be manipulated. Tools that protect folks who don't have the time or money to be taken advantage of. I want to level the playing field." Derek nodded, pride shining. "You're already doing that." "Then maybe I just want to do it bigger." That fall, Gregory Stone, now living in near obscurity, watched a news clip on an old tablet in a cheap motel. His name surfaced only in footnotes and cautionary tales. Every attempt to rebuild had ended at a slammed door. Avery, meanwhile, had just signed a partnership with the U.S. Department of Transportation to implement Clean Codes protocols across all federal fleet service centers, $40 million in funding over 5 years. She was 14. As the newscaster spoke her name, Stone muted the video. He couldn't bear to hear her voice. "I was ruined," he whispered to his reflection, "by a child." But the truth was harsher. He was ruined by his own arrogance, believing brilliance had a uniform, confusing age with ignorance, mistaking confidence for audacity, and underestimating what determination in the right hands could do. At a winter school assembly, Avery stood on stage before hundreds of students. Her last slide read, "Power is easy to fake. Intelligence isn't." She looked out at the crowd. "Someone once tried to embarrass me in front of a room full of people. That's not what broke him. What broke him was that I came prepared, that I knew the system better than he did, and I wasn't afraid to speak even when no one expected me to." A student raised her hand. How did you stay calm? Avery smiled. Because I already knew the answer. I wasn't guessing. I was waiting. Another voice called out, "What's the best revenge?" The smile widened. Being so good they can't ignore you, and so right they can't erase you. Years from now, people would remember that day in Central Motors as the moment an industry changed. Avery would remember it as the day she stopped waiting for permission. Because once you quit letting others define you by their expectations and start defining yourself by what you know, the world becomes yours. And that, she knew, was only the beginning. Months later, Avery stood at a congressional hearing in D.C. This time she wasn't alone. Next to her, Maria Reyes, no longer hidden in a dusty shop, adjusted the microphone and looked the senators in the eye. "I was silenced once for telling the truth. Today, I choose not to be." The room held its breath. And just like that, two women, one, barely a teenager, the other hardened by betrayal, delivered the testimony that led to the first federal legislation protecting whistleblowers in the automotive tech industry.